Hi, Kaya.
Hi.
Welcome, and thank you for interviewing with me. Kaya is a personal evolution facilitator. He's an international Reiki master, teacher, and energy synthesizer. He has taught in the United States, as well as in Beijing and Brazil. All right, Kaya, so tell us about the work you do as a healer.
In a synopsis, I'm a evolution facilitator. What does that really mean? I use energy work to help people evolve themselves to become a better person. What does that mean? We're all good people in our own minds, but we're always looking for something. And what we try to do in the Kaya Universal teaching and training programs that we have is to teach people to tap into the inner self. And the inner self is based on energy. We buy into the concept that we're just a material being, and we leave out that we're actually spiritual beings. And so what I do is try to get us to flip that a little bit and to get a little bit more into the spiritual side of who we are. And so I use different types of energy work, such as meditations, not meditation like we normally sit there and we say Om and whatever, and for 45 minutes we're in a empty space. But the types of meditation we use are called active meditation, which means that I facilitate a transition between the human self and the spiritual realm. How do you do that? Well, we invite the Ascended Master Hierarchy and different other interdimensional beings to come in and actually download light information. And so people sit and visualize what they hear. Like I might say, well, there's this pillar of light coming down from your crown through your entire body into the ground, and they just listen to this and just see that happening with them. And this is the meditative part, and we go further and further with that. And this is like a step-by-step process. And then we use Reiki and Kundalini Reiki and DNA Reiki, and we have all kinds of different types of energy work, primarily to detoxify the energy system.
Okay.
And what does that mean? That means that in order to connect to your inner being, you got to remove all of the blockages that we have. And sometimes you can think about this like taking soap, washing the body, cleaning yourself off, and then all of a sudden you see a brand new clean kind of skin. Well, our mind and our emotion is so cluttered and blocked and full of debris that we have to remove that. And we do that using energy, such as Reiki as a basis. What is Reiki? Well, first of all, Rei means light, or ray of light, and Ki means energy. It's a Japanese word for energy. So Reiki together means energy and light. So working with the light of energy. And this light energy comes from the universe. And the universal energy aspect it comes from is that of unconditional love. So there have been some people in religious organizations that say, well, you know, Reiki is not of God. And I chuckle a little bit because everything in creation is created by God. The only thing that is not of God is the misuse of creation. And so Reiki is unconditional love, light energy that is used for healing. Now, healing is a side effect of Reiki. It's not the cause. Reiki in itself is to put you on your spiritual path. That's it, and to elevate your consciousness. And what a wonderful side effect that it can actually be used for healing. You know, so Reiki is pretty much an attunement or an alignment to unconditional love. That's what it is. And what is the most primary healing aspect that we have on this planet? Love. We say, oh, love conquers all. Well, that's what Reiki is. It's a very subtle, soft, gentle energy that basically tricks the body to let go. And if you love somebody, you just let go of everything, don't you? Right? Somebody give you a big old loving hug, you become soft, mushy, and smiley and wonderful, and you just feel it, and the world is good. Well, Reiki makes the world good.
So from my understanding, there are different worlds, okay, or different beings. And healers have the ability to communicate with these worlds and beings. Tell us a little bit about that. How do you do that?
Well, I just like to make it simple, like looking in a microscope at an amoeba. Is it there or is it not there? The same thing with going to the 4th, 5th, 6th, 12th, whatever other dimension. There are beings living in many different dimensional spaces. And we can only see the dimensions that we can cognize.
Right.
And so we live in a 3rd dimension. We believe that that's all there is. But there's beings that live in the 4th dimension. There are beings that live in the 5th dimension, so forth and so on. Just like the amoebas in the 1st dimension.
Right.
Now the thing is, we have to create a microscope or some kind of energy scope to tap into it. And how do we do that? Well, we increase our vibratory rate. We expand our consciousness to be open to other dimensional expressions. So we tap into energetics beyond ourselves. So this is what we call, microscope was
Right.
looking deep. We need a macroscope.
Okay.
That is something to expand beyond the 6 senses that we normally have.
So how do we heal ourselves? Because you said you help facilitate healing. So how does that work, so to speak?
Well, it's very interesting. Understanding that my whole platform for healing is to purify and detoxify the person's energy field first. When I can clean up your mental, physical, emotional, or spiritual debris, then all of a sudden you can tap into all the things that are there. I agree that there are beings interdimensionally that exist, and I call on their assistance. I work with certain ones. How that came about, well, that's another story, a different progression.
Yeah.
But basically, when I work with the person, some people hear voices in their head. Well, me, I'm an empath. So I feel things. And then I have another super sense. And we all have super senses. But my developed super sense is a super sense called clear knowing. That information is dropped into my consciousness at a moment's notice. So as I'm working on a person, I might see flashes of light on their body to direct me to that area of the body. Or I might just, for the lack of a better expression, I don't hear the word, but there is an impression of a thought that comes into my mind, and I ask a question about a triggered thought. Or I would, in my mind's light, because I can't say in my mind's ear, in my mind's light, I would see this word or this question to ask, and I would ask, or I would go to that particular spot, and then somebody say, oh, that's running all the way down to my baby toe. And how can you touch me on my shoulder and it runs down there? Well, it's not because I myself did that. It's because of the interdimensional healing beings that I work with, and that we all work with, knowingly or unknowingly, guided me towards on that person's body.
Okay. And I think it's just interesting how you say, like when you talk about the microscope and the macroscope, because we do have this misconception that the only thing that exists is what we can see, right? And that is such a limited way to go through the world, to understand the world. We know that there's things bigger than us, and like you said, there's things that happen around us all the time that we can't see, but we know it's there. We know we can feel the force. We know the power is there, but we just can't see it. It's almost like you see a bug, right? And the bug has certain limited capacities. It knows that it could, so it can't see me, but it knows that I'm a force that's there.
Yeah.
And so it starts going another direction.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have eyes.
And we do
Right.
that too.
Exactly. Right. So.
And so we don't make that connection. And that's what I try to get people to do, is to make that connection. We have this going on all the time, that all of a sudden we're going somewhere and we feel some ominous feeling. Oh, I don't think I should go that direction. And we go and we get in trouble. Or we don't go and we never know what the trouble was. Or somebody feels that somebody touched you and you look around behind you and it's like, ain't nobody there. What is that? Well, we disacknowledge that it's any kind of being actually being there for two reasons. One, perish the thought if something is actually there, some kind of ghost or we call it ghost because we don't understand it, but some other presence there, and then, oh no, we're so scared because we don't know what it is. And the other thing is, or we can just disacknowledge it and then dumb down ourselves and say, well, okay, well, that wasn't nothing. We acknowledge we were touched.
Yeah.
We acknowledge we felt something. But because we didn't see it, it is not there.
Yeah.
And that has been limiting us. Why? And I really want to say this because it's very, very important. Because we believe that we're material beings and we don't believe that we're spiritual beings.
Right.
But we were created in the image of God. Your holy books say that. But what is that image? And if we were created in an image of God, just like our children are created in the image of their parents, then aren't we like unto that? So the fact of the matter is, until we acknowledge that we are the presence of God in action, we will never acknowledge other realms of life.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, we are God. Why? If you look up the word hue, because we call hue and man. Man is material being or formed. But hue means God or spirit. And if we acknowledge that we are God formed or spirit formed into matter, and we were created in the image of God, what kind of spiritually formed being are we other than God-man beings? And if we acknowledge that, then we can acknowledge the power of God. If we acknowledge that we are the presence of God in action, which means that whatever we do is God action. Everything that we see is creation, including us. Everything in creation, in your holy books it says, God is everywhere, in everything. And closer to you than your jugular vein, so to speak. If we look at all these things in nature, which are of God, and aren't they the presence of God in action? Isn't it a wonderful thing to see a tree and really dissect on how it grows and how it lives so long and whatever? That's God.
That's right.
God created, He put Himself in it. The only reason why we exist is because God exists.
Right.
And if there was no existence, we wouldn't be. And we are God expression. And so if we are that, then we have super senses. The only reason why we don't feel them, acknowledge them, or whatever is because we're in form. So it's harder to express it. But as we lighten our load mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, we actually bring out the God presence that we truly are. And we're taught very much to say, oh no, it's blasphemous to say that you're God. Well, we are not the source. But God, in His holy books, presented to us, said that we're created in His image and likeness.
Yeah.
And likeness doesn't necessarily mean form, but we don't have to get into what that likeness is, but just use it as an expression that is very, very important to accept ourselves as God-man instead of just man beings.
Right.
Because then, when we feel this energy touch us in the back of our shoulders, we say, oh, there's another presence here trying to get our attention.
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, there's nothing going on.
I think a lot of us just live in a culture that's very materialistic, so that once keeps you in your material world, so that you just keep buying things and consumer capitalism, all those things that I think it just keeps us focused on our material selves. And because once you learn this information, it's extremely empowering. So imagine living in a world where people understood the world the way you understood it. What would our world look like?
Well,
if we were all empowered in that way.
Yeah. Well, the world would be very interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, you have a question in the line of how to become a healer, or what is the step towards that? Well, basically, the first step was to accept that you're the presence of God in action, and then accept the truth of your creation. What does that mean? That means we all have spiritual laws we have to abide by. And in abiding by the spiritual laws of nature that allows for existence to occur and recur, we have to abide by our own spiritual law of our creation.
Right.
Not one of us are created to act and interact in the same manner. We have our own way of cognizing and expressing.
Mm-hmm.
But every time that we try to fit into somebody else's paradigm, we create sickness and ailment within
That's exactly
ourselves.
right.
Because our nervous system is rejecting
Oh my God.
being other than what it is. And so the first key to healing is accept and be yourself.
Right.
And in accepting and being yourself, the presence of God in action,
Mhm.
it means that your quirky ways are absolutely good for you.
Yeah.
And when you try not to be quirky because it doesn't fit into some club or some group,
Mm-hmm.
then you get sick.
Yeah.
But if you were being the quirky person you were, it might not be in resonance with everybody else, but it's in resonance with you.
Right.
And as long as you're doing and accepting yourself and being true to yourself, expressing yourself truthfully, then there's 50% of your sickness all the way gone.
And I think that's part of why we have, like, and I think in this culture, public health is becoming the dominant career and things like that. And I think it's because we have so many sick people. And I think a lot of people are sick and unhealthy because they're trying to fit into a culture that's not natural.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the source of, but I think that just kind of what you sort of kind of just spoke to.
Yeah, that just further along what is actually being said. And acceptance of this is who I am.
Yeah.
Is the most empowering thing, because when we feel empowered, we walk with confidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I'm saying I have a super sense called clear knowing. I know things that I don't know why I know it. It just pops into my head. I have a super sense, clear sentience. I just feel things in the environment. I can feel the presence of other beings around. We all have super senses. But because I accept that, I publicly say that I have this. I'm not crazy. Neither are hundreds of millions of other people who have their super senses active, but it's not appropriate to say it. Why? Because somebody wants to categorize you as being something. No, I accept myself for myself. And so my body doesn't have a whole lot of conflict, because I acknowledge that this is what I believe. This is what I feel is the truth. And so when we have a mass awakening, then the governmental structures based on control breaks down.
Right.
And this is what the governmental structures does not want to happen.
Right.
But eventually it has to happen anyway, because people are getting sick, people are dying, and it's not just a physical phenomenon. It's a spiritual thing. Like a lot of people come to me and they said, I don't know what you did to me, but I felt like spiritually I was dying.
Yeah.
So it was a very interesting point that you brought that up, because that's a fact.
Yeah.
People feel like they're searching for something, and what they're really searching for is the truth of themselves.
Right, it's within themselves.
And to be themselves.
Right.
But they can't do that because they're living in society that doesn't promote that.
Right. Tell us some secrets. Is there some secrets about healers or that we can share with us?
Well, first of all, I'm not special.
Okay.
I am no different from any and everybody else. There is no real secret. We are the secret. What does that mean? Just like I said a moment ago, basically, accept ourselves as the presence of God in action. When we can open ourselves up as being a spiritual being, having a form material experience, we open a door that's so vast and so wide of acceptance. You see, there's two things that I teach. Acceptance and love in spite of. Accept things for what they are, because it is what it is. I might want to change it, but I can't change another person, place, or thing to be what I want it to be.
Right.
This is what our societies are based on, and this is why we get sick. And then love in spite of. In spite of what? In spite of them being themselves or who they are. Because it's not our job to make them what we want them to be.
Right.
We spend half of our time in life with our mates, with our friends, with whatever, to get them to be what we want them to be. And we're making them sick because they're trying to fit the bill, or we're making ourselves sick because we're trying to fit that bill. The secret is be yourself. The second thing, feel what you feel and express it. Because you don't hold it in, it can't take hold of your body. So 2 and 5, second chakra and fifth chakra equals 7. 2 plus 5 is 7. 7 is a number of perfection. 2 means feelings. 5 means communication. Feel, communicate. Perfect.
Okay. Right. And you just answered the question about relationships, and if we if we could be ourselves and be ourselves, and we can heal ourselves, and then if we accept people for who they are, then we can have a better relationship.
And acceptance means give permission.
Okay.
Give permission that it's okay for this person to be this person. Give permission it's okay for you to be yourself.
Okay.
But first and foremost, be yourself. And when you do get in a relationship, be yourself. And as the person is trying to change you, acknowledge that in the relationship through expression, this is who I am. This is who I want to be because I like being me. Because really when we get into a relationship, we don't want the same person. We want somebody different. That's what attracts us. So don't lose your identity.
Okay. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about was how I came to know you, right? And as I had said before, I felt like I was dying a spiritual death, and because I had really been kind of disconnected from religion, although I think all religions had some truth, but I had kind of disconnected from it, so I felt like I was dying spiritually. And so when I came to visit you, I think we were sitting, whatever you did, I closed my eyes, and then I began to wonder, like, what am I doing here? Some of that went through my head. But when I left, and so you asked me the question, and I finished. You said, "Did you feel that?" And I said, "Yeah, I felt the surge of energy, right?" And so, but I had felt the energy, the surge, so, it's just, that's what I felt. So about a half hour later, I went to visit my sister, and about a half hour later, I was like, wow, it was just like this euphoric feeling came over me. And then the feeling lasted like for about a month. And it was just an amazing feeling and experience. And I think what that experience did for me was that it, and actually now after, doing classes and things like that, I began to now have a different relationship with religion, because now I saw it differently. So tell us about your book again.
This book here, is being sold on Amazon.
Okay.
So you basically look up Reiki Masters Training Manual on Amazon. It'll come right on up. You can get this book from my website, www.kayauandiverasoul.com. And then you can also see the type of energy work and classes that I also present to people.
Oh, okay, good. Right, because I forgot to tell you to talk about your classes.
Okay.
And I don't know if you're still doing energy healings, but you actually say you facilitate people doing their own healing. So you basically do classes.
Yes, I do classes, but in the classes we do healings. And I do have people that call on the side, and I do private healings on different people for different reasons. I teach at Phoenix and Dragon Annex, and the location is 5505 Roswell Road, Atlanta, 30342. Telephone number 770-954-6027. I have classes predominantly on Mondays and Tuesdays. There are 3 different types of classes going on. So if you connect with me through my website, all that information is there as well.
Okay, give us your website again.
KayauandiveraSoul.com. www.KayauandiveraSoul.com.
Okay, and show me your book one more time.
And here it is, the first of a series of books that are Living Light Energy books.
Okay, thank you.